You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Once upon a time, B&H decided to produce a first-class photography podcast, and unbeknownst to me, they thought it'd be a swell idea to have me host the show. Since I already had my shoes and socks on, I decided to give it a try. And after a few practice runs and a short list of tweaks, we hit the air, and it's been uphill ever since. We've had some incredible guests. Our topics are broad, eclectic, addressing aspects of photography from gear to technique to history and art. Everyone we've invited onto the show, regardless of the topic, has been amazing about sharing their passion for photography. In recognition of completing 20 episodes, we're going to do a best of, a greatest hits, a sampler platter, an audio buffet if you prefer, including a few moments that show me a little bit less than professional when moving my lips. Start over. While you're listening, feel free to give us your opinions on Twitter at BHPhotoVideo with the hashtag BHPhotoPodcast. After recording several pilot episodes, deep tracks, let's call them, which might or might not see the light of day, one of our first shows was titled Are You Down with Drones? And it featured director, drone pilot, and founder of the New York Drone Film Festival, Randy Scott Slavin, who shared with us how he got down with drones and the rapid advances he has seen in the technology over the years.
Yeah, I got into it at the same time that you did. Really, the first generation Phantom is kind of what got me into it. Really, the way that the story goes, which is actually 100% true, is I like watching skateboard videos. I've been a director for the past 10 years, and I always like watching skateboard videos because they're kind of repositories of really good style, and they're usually very fringe, which I particularly like. You always see interesting camera techniques, technologies, and whatnot. And there's one video that I saw called Pretty Sweet. And it started out with this shot that just literally blew me away. My jaw was on the floor. I was like, how did they shoot that? It starts out as a close-up on somebody's face. It goes over their head, across a street, over like a 12-foot chain link fence, down a corridor, up and down, around another corner, down a flight of stairs, and then it ends up circling this whole group of skateboarders and going up into the air. And I was just dumbfounded. I was trying to figure it out. I was trying to figure out maybe they cut a hole in the gate, maybe they're following them with some kind of like gimbal system, Steadicam that's attached to a golf cart. I had no clue, honestly. And I watched it over and over again, and I saw a shadow. And the shadow was like a flying camera. It was, I was like, okay. So I started looking online, and I was like, wow, this whole drone thing, flying cameras, what the hell? It was way more relegated to hobbyists and people that were kind of just building their own systems. And I found the Phantom, and that was just as the first Phantom came out. No gimbals, no nothing at that point. And I probably bought it here, at B&H. And I had one, within the week, and I started flying it immediately. And what's interesting about that time, as you kind of mentioned, is, it was a lot more janky than it is now. These days, you hook up, you have your cameras hooked up to your phone, you have 17 satellites, you let go of the controller, and it is rock solid in the air, doesn't change. You can probably shoot a time lapse with no problems whatsoever, and maybe even very minimal post-production with any kind of camera motion. Back then, it was not even close to that, and no gimbal. So, anytime you move the drone left or right, you had that camera motion in there. A tilt right would cause a tilt right in the camera. And I actually kind of really look very fondly upon that time. The time that I spent really learning how to fly the Phantom in the gimbal-less era, or my pre-gimbal era.
Right.
Back then, you really had to learn how to utilize the wind. Because when you were pressing your aileron or your rudder, anything in any direction, it would cause so much camera motion. So you had to really fly upwind and let it, the natural camera motion kind of drag it. And there was a real art and finesse to getting any kind of decent shots at that point. There still is. I still think it is an incredibly difficult art.
It was also kind of unpredictable. I know the first, I'd say, half dozen flights that I had, they were really, really good. I was able to get the thing to shoot up, come down, and I remember I was playing around. I was having it hovering over a juice bottle that I had on the ground. I was getting just to tickle it and knock it around a little bit and then take off and come back down, and it was fine. and then I crashed it, and it never quite worked the same way.
Well, they're not meant to be crashed. I mean, let's be real. I mean, especially now that we have something like the Inspire. I mean, the Inspire is not meant to be crashed at all.
Right.
As soon as it falls, I mean, it's like it has that very delicate gimbal. All the gimbals are delicate, but that one especially is hanging down off the bottom. And, it's like as soon as it gets knocked, any of the blades get knocked, and it's just going to fall. And as soon as it falls on the gimbal, it's done.
Well,
So,
can you explain gimbals?
yeah, a gimbal, to put it in very basic terms, is kind of like a chicken's head. You know how like you hold onto a chicken and you move it around and the head of the chicken stays in exactly the same place?
Aha.
I'm hearing crickets here. I mean, all right.
No,
I'm from New York
no.
City, so I don't really know much about chickens either, but I did know about this before gimbals. Anyway, the idea is that basically that, the gimbal, through the use of motors, some of them in 2 dimensions, some of them in 3 dimensions, counteracts the motion of the craft and the wind so that the camera is stable.
Thank you. Danny, we followed with an episode on the benefits of a long-term photo project with noted trained photographer Dennis Livesey, and one on the intricacies of the used camera market with B&H's own Chris Conte. We then welcomed photographer Harvey Wang, who had just released his book From Darkroom to Daylight, for which he interviewed legendary photographers about their transition from film to digital photography. He talked a bit about the importance of time spent in the darkroom and the idea that image making with film comes from the subconscious.
The fact of the matter is digital is a whole lot easier in a lot of ways. And
absolutely,
life is busy and it's just the way to go. Unfortunately, the time you save, you spend on a computer. And I think for me, the pushback eventually came is that, okay, I'm not in the darkroom, but I'm sitting working in Photoshop for hours after hours, and it just wasn't fun.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
well, did you find that the time in a darkroom was fun, or look? I mean, is that nostalgia for the darkroom? Which I think nostalgia is a big part of this discussion. But there were times when I hated being in a darkroom and I just wanted to get out of there and go somewhere else. There were other times when I loved it. But,
right. Yeah, it's just about headspace. But one thing I did realize that there's plenty of times the darkroom was tedious, especially if you. It's all about everything being right, the music being right,
Thank you for bringing that up.
The music, the time. But the fact is, you had this alone time, which you don't have in modern life anymore. You're always connected. You're always plugged in. You're always on a screen. You're always interacting in some way. Even if you're doing Photoshop, you're getting text messages.
Absolutely.
There's a constant barrage of things. So maybe it's nostalgia, but the darkroom was quiet time and alone time. And I have two grown daughters and two small children, and I used to bring the big ones into the darkroom, and I still cherish, and I think they do too, that time together in the darkroom, away from distractions and screens and electronics.
Yeah. No, I have. I think we probably all have our kind of darkroom stories or our times. No, you
Not
don't.
me.
No.
I spent exactly maybe 6 hours of my life in a dark room.
Oh yeah.
I was the guy that shot a roll and then dropped it off at the photo store. So
Right.
never Yeah, I see. I'm getting nasty looks from
Right.
from around the table here.
I spent years in the dark
It
room.
has to do with my age. There weren't a lot of dark rooms.
Yeah. And-
Johnny, you claim we were all about the same age. That's really not true.
Okay. Yeah. No. Well, you look much older than you are then.
In my teens, they discovered that those chemicals are bad for you, and they kept us away.
Right.
But we are living in an interesting time, because photography from the very beginning was a chemical process that required a darkroom. So when you say evolution, revolution, photography is still photography, and people would argue that it really doesn't matter what camera you use. But I do believe that in digital, you can emulate almost anything in film at this point. Maybe that wasn't true 10 years ago, but there is still a difference, I believe, in the relationship you have to the art if you are limited by 12 or 36 exposures, if you're forced to think and slow down. I think looking at the back of a camera after you shoot breaks a flow in certain ways. Jeff Jacobson, who's famous, well-known for doing Kodachrome, working in Kodachrome, he pointed out that just looking at the back of the when he shot Kodachrome, it was the making the pictures was in the subconscious. Whereas in digital, it's brought right to the consciousness. And I think that affects the images you make. There are tangible differences, I believe, aside from the fact that film has a thickness that you don't find in digital files.
Something that you mentioned that I wanted to bring up, which is the idea of digitally scanning your filmed image
That's
And-
what I'm
and-
doing now.
Is that what you're doing? And are we just defeating the whole purpose with this? I mean,
I think that is the perfect marriage of film and digital, is to originate in film and scan, because hands down, you can do remarkable things with post-production and printing. And if you start with a negative, which has this inherent grain structure, I think that all the people I photographed, David Goldblatt, the great South African photographer, Jerry Liebling, they're working in film, but they're loving what they can do with post-production and having the time,
We really began to hit our stride with episodes on documenting climate change with photographers Ed Kashi, Greg Kahn, and Carolyn Monastra, and an episode, Do You Have Gas?, about camera marketing and new toys. We then did a really unique show on the history of the Leica camera company and how its owner, Ernst Leitz, helped Jews and other persecuted peoples escape from Nazi Germany. We were joined by Frank Dabba-Smith and photographer Jill Enfield, whose family was personally aided in their escape by the Leitz family.
Nazis take power in early 1933, and some of the first things they do are designed to marginalize, isolate Jews economically. So Jews in all sorts of work are losing their jobs. There are economic boycotts, so businesses are being lost. So the idea is to economically marginalize them, okay? And the rest of what we call the Holocaust grows, but it all starts with isolating somebody. And when you've isolated somebody, then incidentally, you can make all the propaganda, and because people don't have relationships so much with, say, the victim, then your racist propaganda has more chance to succeed. So young people are having trouble in school. Businesses are going bankrupt. And these people know of Ernst Leitz's reputation as somebody who's caring, and they come to the factory. Also, he had many Jewish friends, and they come to the factory asking for apprenticeships for their children. And so we see this immediately. And at the time, for Jews to gain apprenticeships like this was extremely rare. Many Jews are really flailing. And Ernst Leitz, without hesitation, is taking on young men, in some cases young women, short-term or long-term apprenticeships, and it's case by case. So he's trying to help in a way that's appropriate for each person's circumstances. And there are many examples that that I've discovered and have probed in terms of my research. And there's some amazing stories of people coming to this country, coming to Britain, and then also having their passage paid for to get here and having jobs here with Ernst Leitz, up on Fifth Avenue and other places. And it wasn't easy for Jews to get good jobs with Kodak and blue chip American companies during this period. But a German company, their agency is becoming a source of sustenance for refugees.
Which brings us to Jill Enfield.
Yes.
For those of you wondering, okay, well, what's Jill doing there?
Who's been waiting patiently.
Jill, can you tell us? You have an interesting story. Your connection to this is really wonderful. Could you tell us a bit about this?
I can. So my grandfather owned, with his brother, a store in Frankfurt, and they had 5 stores altogether. And it was the house of gifts. But their main stay in the store was really Leica cameras, and so cameras, photographic equipment, radios, technology. They took all of the business owners to Buchenwald after Kristallnacht from Frankfurt.
Right.
And my grandfather and his brother were 2 of the people that went. And they kept them in a separate area. It was called Block 5. And all they did all day was sign over everything they owned, everything, so that they would end up with nothing. My grandfather and his brother got visas to come to the United States, but But they had to, when they were let out of Buchenwald, they had to walk those 5 miles or 8 miles or whatever in December to the train station. And then there would be Jewish women at the train station that would feed them and give them a ticket to get back to Frankfurt. But, they were not young men. And, they weren't that old, but they were, they weren't 20. And a lot of them were old. And it was arduous for them to go through that. And a lot of them were very sick. And, my grandfather was very sick, and my great-uncle was...
Gustav really suffered and had
that was
physical and
terrible.
emotional breakdowns from that experience and was never himself again.
No, he never worked again.
Yeah, see, there were Gestapo spies in the factory.
The year ended with a lively discussion on the best cameras of 2015. We had Matt Hill and Levi Tannenbaum on board, and they shared their opinions on the offerings from Sony, Canon, and Nikon, amongst others.
I'm just going to jump right in. I think it's amazing that Sony's put out pretty much 6 cameras in 2 years, and each one is a legitimate step up from the next. There is a reason why you would graduate from an A7 to an A7 Mark II, or an A7 to an A7R Mark II, or an A7S to an A7S Mark II. This is the kind of innovation which I'm not sure if Sony can actually keep up, but it's amazing to see within the first 2 generations such nice feature sets at the next camera level.
And they have everybody else's attention, too.
Oh, yeah. It seems to be relentless to me. I think that they absolutely have intended to dominate the market, and they're putting every available resource into it. And it does have that special, wonderful thing of being able to mount practically any lens. So if you love glass in general, it's a great choice.
Yeah, totally agree. And this is actually, I'm going to take the same moment also to talk about the 5DS for a sec. Love the fact that Canon came out with a 50 megapixel. I started off on I think it was a 10D and moved up to 5D when the classic body came out in the 5D Mark II. So my love for Canon goes way back, and I love the fact that they came out with a 50 megapixel camera. I'm just also really annoyed that they didn't increase any of the dynamic range on it or any of the color consistency, which they could have done. It's one of the reasons why I think the D810 and Nikon's been doing so well against them, even at the lower megapixel range.
Bigger is not always better. More of the right thing is always better these days. And that transforms into cameras and many other things. It's well, this is going to sound weird, but it's how you use it that's most important and what people want out of it, right? So 50 megapixels might be totally appropriate for somebody who has to do billboards. That's fantastic.
And even that's not necessarily true, because we both know people who've shot with much lower resolution cameras and have produced billboards in similar size.
But you can stand 3 feet away from it and have proper resolution.
Exactly. Yes. Viewing distance. No two ways about it.
So for your fine art photographer who just needs to print a 4 foot by 6 foot on a wall,
right,
which people are going to stand next to, you're right.
Probably paramount. If you just need resolution, then you're going to need those giant file sizes, and you're not going to be banging away a couple thousand shots a day like a wedding photographer.
We're going to be right back with some more greatest hits. But before we do so, we really love doing the show, and if you love listening to it, reach out to us at BH Photo Video, #BH Photo Podcast. We kicked off the new year with a podcast on creative tips and exercises for improving your photography. We were joined by Todd Vorenkamp and Jason Fulford, who co-edited The Photographer's Playbook. We then had episodes on how professional photographers using Instagram, the state of the stock photography business with former Getty photo director Rana Farr and Paul Melcher. And that was followed by Behind the Scenes at a Camera blog with Jay Herman and Kevin Raber of Luminous Landscape. It was a great pleasure and a real kick to welcome Museum of Modern Art photography curator Roxana Marcocci and writer and CEO Stephen Mays to discuss the MoMA new photography exhibition, Ocean of Images. After a group outing to see the show, Stephen posed some great questions to Roxana.
One of the contradictions in the show was that it is fixed. It's on the walls and on the floor of the modern, and that to me seemed really contradictory with the nature of photography at the moment. I have to say, I was delighted when you said that that one of your pieces is going to be destroyed at the end of it, because part of what we're, not because I don't like it, but part of what the real experience of imagery at the moment is its transience. Right. We live in it as a stream rather than as a pool. It's constantly flowing, and this notion of images coming, images going is really very expressive. And I love that the modern should be doing that, as just showing for a second or a few weeks. A piece of work. But the contradictions to me were that photography is fluid. It is quantum, and it does exist all the time in different forms, at different moments, to different people, simultaneously. And yet here we are in the museum. It's the conventional white wall box with images fixed, albeit some are in a loose stack that you can take off. But it's a fixed installation, and this notion of an installation seems very contradictory with the essence of what you're even saying, let alone what's actually happening in photography at the moment. It's isolated from daily experience. It's fixed in time and space. It will end. It's here. It's in this location at this moment. And it's tethered to text. It struck me that all the ideas you're talking about were very difficult to express in the actual exhibit. And I wondered, if you how you wrestle with that, because, as you say, there's no particular online session for it. It's just, it does exist as a physical show.
It's true that I read online a lot, but I also read books and magazines today. And there is something about the objecthood of works that are driven by the photographic. And again, I get back to the photographic because it's a difference between the photograph and the photographic. And I think that this exhibition, while it happens in the galleries, it takes on many, many forms. Some of them are projections, some of them morph into three-dimensional installations, some of them are just a map-like. Some are takeaways that will disappear, some of them are ephemeral installations.
I saw that particularly, I was thinking with the Mishka Henner piece,
yes.
Which manifests in the gallery in three forms.
Yes,
and Mishka produced a book.
Yes.
Which is essentially a data visualization piece,
right.
which is really interesting.
Yes.
It's a fabulous piece of work. And yet in the gallery, it exists as a book, as a video, and as a text.
Correct.
And I wondered, is there something wrong with the book that?
Yeah, you can't. But the book is not available to touch.
Yeah,
it's behind glass.
I think that Mishka did the video expressly to show how many black pages you'll have. How do you kind of even understand distance? But also to defy the rational Cartesian kind of understanding of encyclopedias, which provide knowledge, right? Knowledge gathering. That goes page after page after page that is just black. There is another piece I should mention that, in fact, first of all, this started as a marketing campaign, publicity campaign. The group started as a lifestyle magazine and then branched out in various other directions, but this exists, contributed not only a piece for the gallery, but numerous other pieces, some that exist online, some that of them are on throughout the city. They are dispersed. You have to find them. You have to know about it. There is no text. So it's up to viewers who encounter them. And then there is David Horvitz's piece, which is quite exceptional because that is
that called mood disorder? Is this one?
Mood disorder, yes.
I love that, yeah.
Which exists online. This is a piece that exists online. We also have a representation in the gallery, but it continues to exist online. It's viral. It will never disappear. So this is a photograph of the artist that he took himself, a picture, a self-portrait of him with his head in his hands. And then that picture, he downloaded it on Wikipedia to the site of mood disorders. Within instance, it became viral. It was picked up by various other sharing sites and accepted as de facto.
After that heady conversation, we got back to our roots with a very hands-on show about night photography, in which author and photographer Gabe Biederman provided a how-to on shooting star trails. What do you need for taking a perfect star trail photograph, soup to nuts? What do you need to get this picture?
Stars.
yeah. Bottom line, you need stars.
Lots of famous people.
So I mean, there's been some good New York City two-star
two-star
trail
trails.
photographer. You know?
Sometimes it's an airplane, sometimes it's a helicopter.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sometimes it's Venus.
Right. Now you got to get to a rural location again where you can see the stars. And I know people talk about stars as well as the auroras. Like, oh, you can't do it during a full moon. That's BS. You can. Just you obviously want to point away from that to the darker part of the sky. So if you can get to dark skies, and there's apps, there's a dark sky app, so find that. The Northeast is tough, but you can get a little upstate and find some stars. So getting to that location is key. And then the fundamentals, a good camera, a wide lens, a wide and fast lens, whether it's a 24-70 2.8, or a fixed wide lens. That sturdy tripod, and a cable release. Now, this is one where I would say, hey, now's the time. If you want to stack stars, you want to get that cable release that comes with an intervalometer, okay? Because that's where you're going to program in some key features. Now, there's two ways to stack stars or to get star trails, so to speak, because stars start to trail, I would say, about after 30 seconds as a general rule of thumb. How far do you want to get them to trail? Those epic shots you see where the North Star and these great circles of stars, that's about an hour to an hour and a half. Okay, but the longest exposure isn't always the best exposure, right? And we need to experiment, and we need to look and assess the situation. So good stars trails, I think, start to happen really at about 4 or 5 minutes, and that 4 to 5 minute to 15 minute is really nice and realistic and still gives that wow factor. But again, if you want to get those epic ones, you'll be committing to an hour and a half. And there's two ways to do it. We haven't talked about it yet, but every camera has the function called long exposure noise reduction.
Yeah.
Okay. And now most of the times, this is defaulted on most of our cameras. And I'll tell you to take that off right at the beginning. That's something I go through my menu when I first get a camera, and I turn that off because I don't need it. And I want to explore what the camera's capable of before I put sort of a lock on it, right? So long exposure noise reduction, Todd talked about how noise comes from higher ISOs, but it also comes, again, from that processor heating up and how hot it is outside. We need to test our cameras and see what it is capable of. So oftentimes when I'm teaching a workshop, I'll have the students go to their hotel room and shoot just an interior, maybe include a table, and do a test shot, turn out all the lights in the hotel room and do an exposure for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 8 minutes, maybe go up to 10 or 15 minutes. And then you look at those images at 100% on the screen and look especially to the shadows, because noise appears first in the shadows. And look at that and see when you start to see the noise. And what was the temperature in the room? Maybe you can turn it down to 68 or find out what the temperature is outside, try to match it. But that's sort of the best controlled way to kind of test your camera, see what it's capable of. Again, knowing your camera, understanding the camera, the lens, even the tripod, what it's all capable of is going to make you a better prepared night photography outside.
And the last thing you want to do is find out all these things at 1:30
in the morning. In the dark, out in the middle of it. Yeah, with all kinds of weird animals howling at you from the shadows. The safer way, and what most sort of quote unquote professional night photographers do, is they do star stacking. And then what they'll do is they, again, know the parameters of the camera, know the temperature outside. They've tested their camera, and they know that in these conditions, it's okay to get a 5-minute exposure before noise starts to creep in. Now, if I go back to that intervalometer that's plugged in, and if I go a 1 second, if I program it in, a 1 second break, which is the quickest break you can have between images. So I set it for 1 second. I set it to if I want to do an hour, so 5 goes into 60 12 times. So I set it up for 1 second break, 12 shots, each shot for 5 minutes. I press go, and the camera's going to do the job. It's going to collect that information. I bring it back home. It's not going to stack it together internally, I guess, unless you have the Olympus. But you need Photoshop. But you take it in, you do your work on the image, you bring it into Photoshop, and you can stack it. There's very easy ways to stack it in Photoshop. It's by combining the layers and going in lighten mode and doing it. And it's a beautiful thing to see happen. It's like back in the darkroom when you see the image come up when you kind of take 12 images, or some people do it 30-second stacks because, again, it's hot out, so they might do 30-second stacks. So that'd be 120 shots. So you better have a good computer to process those files, especially if it's a high megapixel camera. But they then see it kind of pop up and stack up together. It's pretty magical and fun. And that's how you get it, and it'll be the cleanest star stacked.
We follow that episode with what would become our most listened to podcast to date, a great back and forth discussion about Nikon and Canon's latest flagship cameras and the future of these large body DSLRs.
Are these big cameras going away? I mean, are they the dinosaurs that we won't be using in 3 years?
It's a good question. I think it would really, like, if we want to make the argument for mirrorless, I think there's a couple things we need to see from mirrorless. Although, yes, Sony just brought out an A6300, which is shooting a ridiculous amount of frames per second with no blackout, but the buffer's still not there. It's yet to remain to see how spot on the autofocus is. Can it compare to these kind of cameras? I think it probably can. We're just going to have to see a massive increase in the buffer. The big thing going for these cameras right now, I think, is actually their size and their bulk and their ceiling and stuff like that.
I think it's also important to mention that both these cameras are equally well constructed. The integrity of both cameras is phenomenal. They are both weather resistant, and they're both meant to be used as daily workhorses.
Yeah,
so it's really it's the technical aspects, the specs.
Yeah, it's the inner workings. I mean, they're both very well sealed. Like you said, they're both, really rugged. These are made to take a beating.
Mm-hmm.
I think I want to target the point, which is, are these worth upgrading to?
Mm-hmm.
Number one, if you're making your money using these kind of cameras, I'd say both of these cameras are definitely worth the upgrade. If this is your source of living, both these cameras have tremendous advantages offered over the previous generation.
That's true, but if you only shoot stills, I think the 1DX Mark II is not as enticing an upgrade as the D5 is for D4 shooters. I remember when the D5 came out, I was like, oh, this is amazing compared to the predecessor. But when the 1DX came, while we were still like, oh, this is a spectacular camera, we weren't as blown away, but it's still a great camera. So I think the original 1DX is still going to hang on if you don't care about video.
Well, the f8 across the entire sensor for long lenses with extenders, I think for anyone who's doing sports or wildlife, which is a lot of these shooters.
Or anybody who wants to put a teleconverter on a kit lens, for that matter.
Oh, which is Alan's primary use for teleconverters. There's a good time to note that Alan is a great photographer, especially with Leica and stuff like that.
Where did this come from?
Because you're trying to put teleconverters on kit lenses. So Sean and I are going to have the rest of the conversation. So as I was saying, so if someone's shooting the long lens kind of thing, and they really want these long lenses, the 1DX Mark II is for sure a great step up, as you can get that f8 now across the entire sensor, which is frankly ridiculous. I mean, that's insane.
Mm-hmm. That's true, but it's still. I think it's still, for a $6,000 camera, it's still going to be a hard upgrade unless you're making a lot of money, which a lot of these shooters are.
It's just they buy them anyway. It's like, okay, the
this
new
is
one's
the
out, I'm gonna get
professional
it.
spotty.
Right.
They've probably already had the originals for about 4 years, so it's kind of the time to upgrade. And I don't think, considering the market is professionals, I don't think these types of bodies are going to go away anytime soon.
Recent shows have included a conversation with Blink CEO Matt Craig on innovative ways to find photo work, a chat on photography workshops with the directors of the Eddie Adams Workshop and Photo Quest Adventures, and a really spirited talk on wedding photography style with Christy Drago Price. One of John's favorite episodes was a conversation we had with Time.com photo editor Olivia Laurent and legendary AP director of photography Hal Buell on photo editing and the definition of an iconic photograph.
You're still seeing every single day thousands of images, and not just from the wire, but like walking around town, you're seeing thousands of images. With your phone, you're seeing thousands of images, whether it's on Instagram or you're following the New York Times, or it's everywhere. And I think that affects the creation of these iconic images, because since you're seeing so many images, you don't have time to reflect as much on each one of them, and actually, I'd say, get to understand the power of that image. That would be the biggest difference, I'd say.
Did you get numb by it all? What was your thought?
Well, being the oldest guy in the room with all you young fellas, let me paint two pictures for you.
By the way, thank you very much for taking over my role. I appreciate it.
Pre-digital, AP transmitted 120 pictures a day to newspapers. If we had color, that took up 3 or 4 of those 120 pictures a day. So not much color went out. And I am known for having to tell people this transmission's coming, and we're not going to send you more pictures. We're going to send you better pictures, faster and better quality. We now send each paper close to 900 pictures a day, and we transmit 2,000 pictures because they don't all go everywhere. And so does Reuters, and so does Getty. Mm-hmm. So you're sitting here looking at 6,000 pictures today. Now, this is my feeling of what happens. When you're looking at 120 pictures, you look at every picture, and you say one time, oh, look at that. Isn't that odd? There's Marilyn Monroe standing on with her skirt blowing. Oh, my, maybe we'll put that in the paper. Because it's odd. Not because it's important, but because it's odd. When you're looking through 6,000 pictures, you necessarily have to say, what's the lead story? Obama press conference. What do you got in the Obama press conference? I need a 2-column, I need a 3-column. Now, I'm exaggerating. It's not, I mean, there is a looking for pictures, but a lot of the serendipity is lost in the editing of pictures, I think, today because of the volume. But that's not going to change, I'll also tell you that. You think it's going to change?
Not at all.
No.
It's going to get worse and worse.
It's going to get worse.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to wrap up our Greatest Hits Volume 1 album with a clip from our very first episode with photographer Ann Rong and former New York Magazine Director of Photography Jordan Schaps, in which Jordan outlines his keys to success in the photography business.
Certain things are set in concrete, and that is the talent is paramount, number one, then comes the likability factor. It's a tough world out there. It's a fast world out there. People are not going to suffer people they don't like. And likability is not, oh, how good looking you are. Oh, that's a Prada shirt. It's what kind of connection do I have with this person? Can I send this person to Gracie Mansion to photograph the mayor or do a video on the mayor? It's how does this person comport themselves? And then the other thing, which is the hardest bite of reality, is the art only represents about a third of it. The second third is business. And the third is networking. And where those 3 things overlap, that's called career. Ooh. There are 3 things that you want. I call them the 3 C's. You want credit for your work, cash for your work, and control of your work. Ooh, who owns your images? Is it work for hire, where you take the picture, here it is, now they own it outright forever, and you can't use it, or if you're lucky, you can throw something up on your website? Or are you licensing them
Big
the
difference.
use of the picture?
Yes.
Yeah. I ran into a photographer not long ago who had shot Jennifer Lopez for a New York Magazine cover that I did, and face-to-face in Sam Flax's doorway, he said, "You bought me a house in L.A." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Resale on the Jennifer Lopez shoot. I made $350,000 because we had a license. He licensed us one-time usage for the thing." So you've got to be careful. Now, some people will try and get you to sign a contract. Condé Nast is notorious for work for hire and signing a contract. But you can just because someone puts a contract in front of you doesn't mean you have to nod and agree to sign. You can cross off certain things. And also, going back to something we said before, with your art, likability, trust, intelligence, good-naturedness, and business are the components that make a career. And if you just want to take pictures and not do any of those other things, marry rich and go out and take pictures for fun.
Well, on that note, so here we are. In just a few months, we've touched on a lot of diverse subjects and have welcomed some really incredible guests who have offered some wonderful insights into the art and craft of photography. But I got to tell you, all this sounds real easy. It sounds silky smooth and terrific, but I want you to know there are reasons why you should not try doing podcasts at home. Here are some of them. Let me just you specific. Are they from what I okay, say I'm a performance artist and I want to get a space and dance for strangers. Yep.
Well, there is a.
What was the specific question?
Yay. We love doing these shows, and if you love listening to it, reach out to us at BH Photo Video hashtag. I can't read what the heck this is. Looks like DHW Photo Flow West.
Thanks for checking out the B&H Photography Podcast. Send us a tweet at BH Photo Video, hashtag BH Photo Podcast. Email us your questions or comments at podcast@bhphoto.com.